In this video, we're going to go ahead and do the basic setup of ISE. We're not going to configure any policy. We're just going to kind of start with just the house cleaning duties ahead of time. I had actually recorded a previous video, and unfortunately the sound didn't take on that one, so I'm redoing it. I used the reset config command in here and basically wiped the config. We're going to be using ISE 2.2. It's not a huge jump in comparison to the look and feel of ISE 2.1, but I wanted to make sure that I was creating videos on the most recent versions of ISE. So let's go ahead and a lot of the configs are just kind of held over from what I configured before. So I'm giving this guy IP address of 10.1.100.21, and it's important that when you're configuring ISE that it has IP reachability to the name server, NTP, and the default gateway. If it doesn't have that, it has all sorts of issues. NTP is an important one because if it doesn't have that set up as well, and it gets the wrong time or the time's too far off, it messes up the CA that's configured internal to ISE and causes all sorts of problems, and you might have to even reinstall ISE. So I definitely suggest that when you're doing this, make sure ISE has reachability to all those things, or don't install ISE until you do. So right now it's going to bring up the network interface, ping the gateway, ping the name server and the NTP server, which are the same server, but you're going to kind of watch this happen. Then I'm going to pause the video and come back to it after it's come up. It takes about 10-15 minutes to get everything situated. And it also checks the I/O for the disk. So I've ran ISE on spinning 7200 RPM disks and haven't had a problem. I think the user guide actually states how fast it has to be in the I/O input it needs. It's not that much, but on a I/O intensive storage array, or really old disks, or maybe somebody's desktop and it's just you're using cheap disk, it may not work and it will throw an error if you do so. Just like if you don't configure at least I think it's 100 or 200 gigs of hard drive space, ISE also will throw an error, won't let you continue with the installation when you're initially installing it from ISO. So when I usually install ISE, there's a couple different ways you can install it. You can, if you're virtually or otherwise, you can deploy an OVA. If you do that, I highly recommend that after it's deployed, don't make any changes to the reservation. So even if your ISE node looks like it's not really using much in terms of RAM or CPU, don't lower it down just because you want to save some extra resources for another VM. Don't do it. When you do that, I've seen ISE start to behave very slowly and sluggish, and I've even seen corruptions happen because of it. So if you deploy as an OVA, leave it as it is. If you want to increase or decrease or have or any of those things that are outside of the bounds of the OVA, then download the ISO and then create the virtual machine. Follow the guide for the virtual machine requirements exactly to the point. Make sure it's custom, which if you go to VMware, you create a new, I'll show you right here, file, new virtual machine. You create it as a custom VM. It's not typical, and test. Make sure that you put on a fast enough speed disk space. Put Linux and Red Hat Linux 7. Make sure that you allocate the vCPUs you want and the memory you want. Don't make it, because you're not going to make changes later. Make sure the adapter is VMXNet 3. You want to make sure it's VMware Paratrooper. And as of ISE 2.1, I believe, it does state that you can thin provision. Don't do it. I would just go ahead and thick provision. Make sure it makes life easier. So thick provision it, and then go ahead and boot up the virtual machine, attach the ISO, and install it. So as you can see here, it's going to go ahead and go through this and reset. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and come back to this when this is finally up, and we'll kind of walk through some of the initial configurations of ISE. Okay, we are back and our ISE node reset. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the running services on here. Easiest way to do that is show application status and then type ISE. That'll show you from the command line that the ISE node has all the running services, the disabled services. So if you can't reach the web portal for any reason, quick and easy way to check from the CLI. So looks like everything's running that I want to be running, which the big one is the application server right here. That without that running, if it's initializing, at that point, you just kind of have to sit back and wait for it to load. If 30, 45 minutes go by and it still hasn't loaded, then I'd probably start troubleshooting at that point because there's something happening in the background. But usually it's, if you're doing this or restarting the service, it's about a 10-15 minute wait. So I'm gonna go log in and show you a couple different things. Alrighty. So some of the different things I want to show with ISE 2.2 for anyone who's been using older versions of ISE or just haven't touched ISE in ISE 2.2 yet. I'm going to show you some of the improvements since ISE 1.x and beyond. So one of the really nice things I love is this customizable dashboard. The older ISE dashboards were not really usable, to be honest. Yeah, let me see if I can do a quick Google search for it really quickly. ISE 1. I'm doing a Google search for the ISE 1.3 dashboard. So this was generally what it looked like. You didn't get to really have the same level of information that you get here. It was all Flash. It was, it didn't really scale well in terms of the actual browser. So when you would look at it and you had like a high definition screen like I did on my Surface Pro, it just looked really, the font was really small. So you get this, and the summary dashboard, you can add or remove widgets, dashlets very easily. So the summary one is pretty useful. You can look at the network devices, and any of these are interactive, so you can click into it and it'll bring you to context visibility and filter based on what you clicked. Endpoints are just looking at the endpoints, then the guest statuses. So the vulnerability dashboard, this has to do with if you integrate a vulnerability scanner with ISE. This is part of the new threat-centric NAC piece. So if you have Rapid7, Tenable, Qualys, you can utilize that here and see your top vulnerable endpoints, and it's pretty nice. You can click into any of these interactive screens, and it'll take you to those endpoints and show you that scale. I really love it. It's kind of trying to show you that all-in-one dashboard. That single pane of glass to some degree. And then the threat dashboard. This is again gathering some information. And from endpoints also will show this, and in later videos we'll go ahead and walk through how to configure this. But I just wanted to touch on that. Earlier versions of ISE also didn't, there was the Radius Live logs, and you had kind of a endpoint screen, which was okay to look at, but it just listed all the endpoints and kind of a couple graphs on top, but it was nothing like this. So you can really dig into the different kind of endpoints and endpoint classification, and with coming with ISE 2.2, you can also add based on like location, department. It's pretty nice to actually see section that out and see like my HQ has a majority of users versus this these different departments or locations. let's see, and then of course the different network devices and the endpoints connected to them. Another thing is the ability to kind of create these custom dashboards. So let's say you have, help desk that you want to create a dashboard for, and only restrict them access to some of these dashlets. You can go ahead and say, I want my help desk to see the authentications, the failure reasons, endpoints, guest status, guest types, look, maybe OS type, their status as well, and boom, you've got an instant dashboard for them, and whatever helps them troubleshoot a little bit easier. Um, or if for your SOC team or somebody doing some incident response, have that custom dashboard that's specifically used for that team. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this dashboard real quick and kind of walk through some of the different things I start out with in ISE when I'm configuring a fresh system. So if you go to Administration, System, Deployment, let's go ahead and start here. In ISE, if you wanted to add additional nodes to a deployment, this is kind of where you start. In my case, this is just a lab, so it's going to be a standalone, but by clicking on the ISE node, I can go ahead and turn on services. So if I want to enable threat-centric NAC, that's where you allow ISE to consume threat and vulnerability information for endpoints. So that's from third-party vendors and some Cisco. Secure exchange protocol. It's for security group source group tag exchange protocol. That's for TrustSec for tagging different endpoints and utilizing that then IPACLs. Device admin service, that's pretty easy. That's Tac-X. Passive identity service. Now, this was somewhat introduced in older versions of ISE, where if you wanted to be, starting in ISE 2.0, if you wanted to be able to sign someone in, basically have ISE looking at the WMI logs instead of .1x authentication, it offered this different ability to do so, and it's for deployments that just didn't want to go through .1x, and they just wanted, if it sees a successful authentication to AD, go ahead and grant them this access. It's also a wonderful fallback method if your .1x rules don't catch anything, and you have this ability to kind of have the catch-all. So if it does see that authentication and maybe group policy messed up, or you did, or for some reason the configuration on those endpoints just weren't set correctly, you can go ahead and have that as kind of a default rule. But starting in ISE 2.2, there's a lot of different options than just scraping WMI logs, and I'll go through that in a moment. Then PX Grid, I always turn this on, and that's where you start to share contextual information and do threat containment based on third-party and other Cisco security products. So if you do a Google search for Cisco ISE ecosystem, it's pretty comprehensive, or it's a pretty large ecosystem of different third-party third-party companies that integrate with us, so with the products on ISE. I mean, even checkpoint firewalls are in here. Yeah, right there. As you can see here, it does have the ability to do identity awareness and officially supported. So pretty awesome stuff there. So I'm going to save this really quick. And the other tab I look through is profiling. So what probes is this and ISE node going to accept? Now, you can configure it separately on different PSNs, policy services nodes, but I wouldn't recommend it. Keep some consistency. So let me go ahead and go through the probes and tell you what I usually turn on. So some of these can send duplicate information or just not give you information that is entirely that useful. So for example, NetFlow, I would just keep that off. Dhcp probe, I would allow it to listen for Dhcp probes. That's just, there's a lot of information you can still pull, like host name and other things from that Dhcp probe. You can also leave the HTTP probe on. That is, it'll only grab that if there's a guest redirect or BYOD redirect, because that splash page is coming to ICE, but I would keep it on because it does give some useful information. DHCP span, don't even worry about that. If you're getting this anyways, you don't need that, and I don't see a real reason to ever turn this on, to be honest. The radius probes, those utilize the iOS sensor inside of iOS. So if you got a switch that's built in at least the last 5 to 8 years, it's probably in there if on a more recent version of code that provides ICE CDP, LLDP, DHCP, HTTP, and MDM information from that iOS sensor. So definitely keep that on because you may not even need to turn this on if that's the case. The Nmap Scan, I would leave that on. That's not going to trigger every time someone connects, but you can go ahead and create custom rules for in order to if you're going to create a custom profile that you're going to scan for one certain open port, and that's that Panasonic camera, for example. It says Panasonic camera and that's all it's profiling with the default profile, but that one port will be open if it is a camera. You can go ahead and create these custom rules for it, or if you wanted to, you can also do scans to kind of check different subnets initially when you build your profiles. DNS, definitely keep this on. The reason being is it looks for performs a DNS lookup of the IP address, and that's important later on when you get to the Active Directory probe, but I'll get to that in a moment. SNMP, the only reason you ever need this on is if somehow you don't have a radius sensor, and that's because look at what it's gathering. A lot of it's the same information, so I wouldn't even bother with that. I would keep SNMP trap because that'll give you link up, link down, and MAC notifications from the network devices. And the AD probe, this is really useful. It's new as of ISE 2.1, and what it does is it takes the DNS name or the IP address, does a reverse lookup in DNS, and then checks to see if it's a computer that is registered in AD. There's a lot of information that AD does, if it is an AD joined machine, will provide to Active Directory automatically, such as what OS is it running, what patch version, what a lot of those different things, which you can create policies based off of at that point, profile policies, without having to full-on posture anything or. At that point, you can. I wouldn't necessarily recommend bypassing .1x for that, but it does allow you to get some more contextual information and increase the fidelity of what it's profiling. So some good information there. So I'm going to kind of leave this where this is at right now. Licensing, I'm not licensing this right now, but if you do spin up a new version of ICE, so like a new VM of ICE, for 90 days you are allowed 100 licenses to consume and try it out. As you can see here, I just spun this up the other day and I have 89 days left. You do have you have traditional licenses and the option for smart licenses. Smart licenses are a little bit easier to manage, to be honest, and that's because instead of being bound to a specific UDI and serial number and having to, if that VM gets burnt or anything needs to be rebuilt, you don't have to go reissue a pack. At that point, you would just join the new VM to the Smart License portal, and transfer your licenses over. So it makes it a lot less of a headache. And also, when you purchase new licenses or renew licenses, it's just a matter of it being updated in the portal. Certificates. So this is obviously very important in ICE, and we're going to go ahead and go through and configure some of these. So first thing first, I want ICE to trust and use my domain machine or domain certificates server that we created in previous videos. So first thing first, I'm going to go to the cert server and log in to the web portal as my administrator account. Give us a moment while it pulls up. So I'm going to go ahead and download the CA certificate first, just to add it to that trusted store. And you want to do this first before issuing a CSR and going through all of that. So first things first, we're going to download this, and you have to do it in base64 format. Click Download CA Certificate. And after that's done downloading, go back to ISE and import it. So let's go ahead and okay, so this is going to be my AD root. And we'll go ahead and trust for client authentication in Syslog. Then to create a new certificate with ISE to be used, let's go ahead and you have to go to certificate signing request and create a new certificate signing request. So in this case, it's going to be engineer Cisco Irvine CA. I'm going to do it based on domain name, which is going to be ice.securitydemo.net, and let's generate that. So you'll export this, and I would open it with Notepad, and it'll basically give me a CSR in PEM format. So you want to copy everything, including the end certificate and beginning certificate part, because that's part of the format. And go back to your Active Directory certificate services, and go back to the home page and click Request a Certificate, Advanced Certificate Signing Request, and give it a moment while it does that. You want to paste that whole CSR in there, and you can use web server, but since we're going to use this certificate for stuff like PXGrid, I'm going to go ahead and choose PXGrid and click Submit. Download it again in base CR64 format and download. AD bind. And choose a new certificate. And so the admin is for client certificate authentication to the admin portal. If I chose this, I basically have to restart ISE's services. I'm not going to bother with that. EAP authentication is for .1x. PXGrid, definitely want to use it for that. And I'll just go ahead and use it for the portal as well. So default portal group. So all of these different portals, potential portals. So I'm going to go ahead and click yes and yes. Perfect. And at that point, this is a previous certificate I was playing around with. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. So as you can see here, our new AD certificate is now bound and being used for those services, and the default certificate that ISE uses is also still there for certain things. If you wanted to take a look at the certificate authority, so ISE as of ISE 1.3 and later, all support a ISE as a CA server. And this is really useful in stuff like BYOD, where ISE issues a certificate after the initial sign-on and onboarding, and at that point it uses EAP-TLS to get onto the network and not have to have the user sign in over and over again. And then, and if you could see the certificates that have been issued, revoke them. And there's already, pre-built in ISE is a existing EAP template that you can use for that. You don't have to create any additional configuration. They kind of set it up so it's really easy, and we'll step through that in a minute. Logging is where you can create remote syslog targets, and using these logging categories. After you create the remote target, you can go to logging categories and send authentication and profile information to third parties. I know Splunk accepts them very easily. StealthWatch, heck, even Palo Alto. They even have a guide on their webpage on ISE integration, and it's all using the same information from Syslog. So So I'm just pulling up. So if you go to there, you can even see that it creates a remote logging target and asks you to add certain information and configure it on ISE side and Palo Alto, and it's able to parse that identity information from ISE. On the maintenance side, this is just for uploading patches, pretty easy and self-explanatory. ISE 2.2 is a week old, so I'm pretty sure they haven't built anything in regards to patching yet or needed it yet. So, but good to know, and you can build your repositories for backups or pulling maintenance. Earlier versions of ISE required you to upgrade from the CLI. Thankfully, in later versions, you can now go ahead and upgrade right in the GUI, and it's a little more seamless that way. Backup and restore, pretty self-explanatory. Admin access, this is where you can go ahead and create roles-based access and link it to AD. We'll go ahead and take a look at this in this video, but I'll come back to it because I want to configure Active Directory here first. Now settings, this is stuff that I definitely configure right off the bat. I'll kind of walk you through some of the stuff I've already done. So let's see, let's make sure that we can go ahead and download the posture updates. See if it works. I'm behind a proxy right now, so it may fail, but we'll see. Yeah, might be the proxy, but we'll just save that for now. Come back to that. Under profiling, I changed the COA type to reauth and changed my own custom strings. If you have a larger deployment, you can enable endpoint attribute filter. ISE gathers a lot of attributes from profiling, and you may not necessarily want to keep them all or have it all in there. So you can enable this if you have a large deployment, so you're getting a little less noise saved. So it keeps only the significant attributes and discards the other, as it says here. As of ISE 2.2, it introduced something called anomalous behavior detection. So it's looking for, MAC spoofing or anything, DHCP class ID changing. I mean, if somebody gets on wired and wireless with the same MAC address, it's probably going to be something that you're going to want to be alerted on. And this is kind of ties along with it. Do you want ISE to start enforcing when it sees that happening? So if you're trying to phase into it or test it out, I'd say start with the detection, then move into enforcement. Under radius, I uncheck these boxes in production. It's good to uncheck them while you're configuring ISE, but keep them turned on keep them checked when you're in a state that you want to be in. What it does is when you have repeated failed authentications or repeated successful authentications, it kind of suppresses a log. And if you're trying to troubleshoot something or changing your changing your policy, you don't want to be troubleshooting a phantom because you fixed one thing and broke something else, but you only have one failure message in a short amount of time. So as you can see here, they can definitely be tweaked, but for purposes of troubleshooting, turn it off at first and when you're first setting up ISE, and then turn it on later. Definitely turn it on because you'll see the re-authentications at an interval, and it'll just kind of get a little noisy. If you're in a really secure environment, you can turn off legacy SHA-1 and TLS support. I believe that Windows 10 also doesn't like it, so it's pretty good to turn it off if it's optional in your environment. Having TLS 1.0, I think, just isn't great with Windows 10. Proxy is where you can configure a proxy if you're behind a proxy. Let's see. This is an important one. So let me go ahead and show you what policy sets are, by showing you what they are not. So if you don't have policy sets turned on, this is kind of what it looks like to create a policy. You have a list of authentication rules under your authentication policy, and just give it a moment while it loads up. I'm impatient, so bear with me. So if you wanted to create more different authentication rules for different devices, you have to, or you know, for different locations even, this can get pretty long. You'll have to create conditions that differentiate all these different places, or change the way that it's organized, and maybe if you misorder a rule, it can break something else. And the same thing goes for authorization policy. This is just the default policy built in, but it gets really hard to, if you have a different location that is that should have one policy and another has another, then you've got roles-based access based on what kind of person or what kind of device. This can just go on and on and on, and it's really hard even for me to read. And I've been playing with ISE for 4 or 5 years now. So policy sets is a way for you to organize your policies in a way that kind of reduces your scope of risk and makes it really easy to kind of cleanly read, that's my policy for wired, or that's my policy for my China location, if that's how you want to break out your policy. So I'm going to go ahead and click enable for this, and it's going to make me relog in, and you're going to see a big difference. So go down to policy sets. Oh, hold on. And now you have these neat ways of creating policy sets. Now, to show you as an example, I'm going to go over here to network device groups and create some different device groups just to kind of show you one way of doing it. So under devices, I'm going to go ahead and create switches. And again, there's unlimited amounts of ways you can do this, variations, but this is just easy one for me to do. Wireless controllers, save, add, firewall, firewalls. It's going to be under device type, save. So we now have a device type, and then we're going to go ahead and configure the location. So this is going to be my security demo lab location. Now let's go ahead and add my network devices over here. These are my network access devices, or as they're referred to in ISE speak, my NADs. So we're going to go ahead and configure my NADs now. So this is going to be switch 1, and this is going to be 175. The device type, I'm just going to go ahead and configure it as a switch, and it is located in the security demo lab. Next, we're going to go ahead and configure my radius shared secret, which is ice cold. And I can also configure S&P settings for the read-only community, ice cold. I'll lower this down, this polling interval down to 1,000. This is for when we get to configuring Tac-X. I'm not going to do it right now, but kind of show you, you'd have to configure that shared secret here. And for TrustSec, to participate in TrustSec and tagging, this is where you'd start configuring that as well. But right now, just go ahead and configure, simple and easy. Then I'm going to add my wireless controller. So WLC. I haven't configured it yet, but it's going to be 141. It's going to be under wireless controllers in the demo lab. Let's go ahead and change this to ice cold. Ice cold. Save. The last thing we're going to add is the ASA. So it's going to be under device type, firewall, location, security lab. SNMP settings. Perfect. So going back to policy sets. Now this is just one way you can do this, but let's start with create a policy set for our wired access. So wired, this is a policy, actually wired, actually security demo wired. So it's going to be for our policy. This is policy for the wired access for the security demo lab location. To meet these conditions, it would be create a new condition, and it has to match this top level condition before it will ever even look at these authentication or authorization policies. So you no longer have to worry about reordering rules or creating conditions that make sure that it only matches these things and it getting convoluted like that. It now can say, you can now say, okay, if it matches this top one, I know exactly what it's going to hit. And it's very easy to read that way. So device type is going to be switches, and add attribute value. Device location is going to be security demo lab. And you can add some more conditions in there. I'm just kind of going very basic on you, and we'll add some more in later videos, but wireless security demo wireless. And actually, let's just go ahead and make it .1x wireless. New condition. Device type. Wireless controller. An attribute and value. It's going to be device location, security demo lab, and a pre-built condition called wireless 802.1x. This is a policy for the wireless .1x access for the security demo lab location. So I hope that's kind of illustrating some of the different ways you can break this down, and it's a lot easier to read than 2 tabs of ongoing policy mess. We could say, VPN access. This is the policy for VPN access. Just go ahead and create a condition based on it coming in and VPN it. And there are ways we're going to make this a little more granular, but I'm kind of trying to just demonstrate right now simple policy sets for you. So if it comes in from a firewall, or a radius request from firewall, it's device type. It's going to be hitting my VPN policy. So right there, I can just kind of break it down instead of seeing one long rolling mess and trying to wonder, okay, what locations is this for, or what way of accessing is this for? Next, let's go back to some of this house cleaning. I'm going to then go to external identity sources and kind of work on configuring Active Directory. So this is pretty easy. Go here to external identity sources and create an AD join name. So this is the host name for my AD domain controller, and then the domain. Click submit. Yes, I would like to join the domain. And you can use a service account, you can use whatever account you want, but I'm just going to use my administrator account really quickly. Now, if you ever have an issue where it doesn't complete, it usually gives you an error message and explains exactly what happened. Three biggest reasons I usually see is the clock skew, and that's if ICE and AD are 5 minutes, more than out of 5 minutes out of compliance time-wise on their clocks. You want to make sure it's within the same amount of time relatively. So make sure, even if you have to go ahead and get this guy synced up to AD as maybe it's, it'll be ICE's NTP server, go for it. If not, you'll get an error quickly. The other reasons are IP reachability. Sometimes a firewall may block it. You never know what's in the way, or an ACL. And the third reason is DNS didn't, it was pointed at the wrong DNS. Maybe somebody, when initially configuring ICE, pointed it at Google's domain DNS servers, and you didn't realize it until you get to this step, and it's not able to resolve your domain controller, obviously. So let's go ahead and next configure which groups to use in future policies. So we created the vendor employee. I'm going to use domain admins, users, and computers as well. So I'll just, you can do a search for star, or you can even filter it down a little bit more if you have a lot of AD groups in production. But since this is a newly built machine, or domain, I'm not really terribly worried about it, so I'm just kind of grabbing it all. And so we got employees, vendors, domain users, domain computers, and domain admins. Click save, save that. And then attributes are, oh, sorry. I was moving too fast for my own good there. Let's see, oh, sorry. So back here. So attributes are different attributes from AD that can be used in policies. You can do a search for like a user and kind of see some of these attributes. So the only thing I'm going to grab is member of, maybe. Click save. And the advanced settings, I just leave it default usually, but if you wanted to tighten up security or loosen it, you've got some options here, as you can see. Then I'm going to go over to certificate authentication profile. So they're the pre-built certificate profile. That's going based off of the ICA. Don't need to fiddle with that. It's great for BYOD, so we're not going to touch that. But I am going to go ahead and configure a couple different things. So AD alt CA. Oh. Identity store is going. We're going to have a check AD, and we're going to go with subject alternative name. Up. The SAN. Click submit. Trying to think. I don't think I'd need common name, but I'll just put it in there as well. Common. Let me see. Hold on. AD common. Okay. Again, I don't think I'll need this, but just put this in there for now. And let me see, if you wanted to create identity source sequences, usually I keep it kind of where it is here, but you can, and this is just like when you're creating policies and you want to reference identity sources, instead of referencing one at a time and creating rules on that, you can group them together and have all of them be referenced and kind of determine the order of what will be checked first. So I will go ahead and go back here, see if there's any other settings. No, I don't really need to do that. I've already configured our network devices. Let's kind of walk through some of the different things. And ICE has in 2.2, so we kind of hit some of those things. So in ICE 2.2 and 2.1, we introduced ODBC as a external identity source. RSA secure ID was there. SAMIL ID providers also is there, which is pretty useful. You can also have external radius servers and a lot of other things. ISE 2.0 introduced location services. So that's where you can have ICE working with your MCSE, Mobility Services Engine, to configure, to basically change access depending on where someone's physically located based on Mobility Services Engine and your wireless. So it's a pretty cool feature. MDM has been around for a long time, external MDM to access. I haven't really played around with NAC managers, but I think that was introduced a little while ago, but not too long ago. Let's see what else. I'm not going to configure any portals. PX grid services. So this is where I was talking about with integrating with third-party services for ICE. When they're added in there, you can actually see them be added, and we will definitely cover this in later videos. But initially, when I'm setting it up, I'm going to go ahead and say automatically approve new certificate-based accounts. Just click on that. And if you wanted to create in ISE 2.2, creating a certificate, a self-signed certificate, pretty easy to do. In my labbing, I'd like using a CA, and that's because if I ever have to tear down an ICE node or anything like that, I don't have to regenerate as many certificates. Having, anything breaks with ICE, you just reissue the certificate from a CA to ICE, and everything else will implicitly trust. But not everyone has a CA server and a PKI infrastructure, so it's a great option to have there. And it works just as well. It's just easier, in my opinion, to do the other way. Let's see, online subscription update. Let's see if we can update this now. Let's see, let's test that. It's probably my proxy, so I'll come back to and configure this. But I do like updating the profiler and doing it on a schedule because there's always new profiles coming out and stuff like that. And you're not having a build one if you have some random device is pretty nice. And then threat-centric NAC, that's where you can, those threat and vulnerability, you can really take advantage of those threat and vulnerability dashboards. And there's quite a few that are built into ICE automatically. Rapid7, Qualys, Cognitive Threat Analytics, AMP for endpoints, So it's pretty easy to set up, and we will, again, walk through it in later videos. So, let's see. What else do I want to cover before I... Okay, so in ISE 2.2, I mentioned that with passive ID kind of got a makeover. It's more than just WMI logs now. So you can still, look at those WMI logs for, successful logins and utilize those. And with that, it's so what you would have and how you would design this is you've got an endpoint that it has a default ACL on the port that just allows them enough access to log into Active Directory, and then nothing else. All ICE does is instead of checking the port for .1x, it actually looks to see if passive ID, ID is checking other means to see if that successful authentication happened, that the user logged in, and then it makes a choice based on that. Now, prior to ISE 2.2, it was looking at the WMI logs of AD, and it worked, but it's getting those logs are kind of a little bit of a pain the way it was because it did involve some registry changes. Nothing terribly harmful, but people are, AD administrators are probably a little uncomfortable making any changes. Let's see, and with ISE 2.2, you have the ability to scrape those WMI logs if you want. You also have the ability to deploy an agent that runs as a GUI-less service in the background and provides that information from domain controllers, and it'll do all the work for you. You can also ingest API, information from API providers. You can have it sit on a span port and sniff Dhcp packets and Kerberos traffic, but again, that's probably, in a small environment that might work easier, but I know a lot of larger environments with a lot of AD servers, and it would be a little harder to scale if it was much. If you're a cross-continent, hundreds of AD server environment, so just something to be aware of. It also can ingest syslogs. All the syslog has to be able to provide to them is, it has to at least have the IP address and the username. And of course, it can do endpoint probes as well, and incoming IP to username mapping updates. So it gives you a lot of ways to ingest this, which is pretty sweet. And likewise, ISE kind of 2.2 and beyond will be replacing that context directory agent. So instead of having, a AD agent installed for Firepower or even other devices, you can actually utilize that PX grid integration, or if the third party accepts syslogs, and have, instead of having all these 20 different products and vendors looking at AD or installing agents on AD, ISE can be providing that same information, kind of work as the central context directory agent. So it's a cool little extra feature there that makes life easier to manage when it comes to that. Let's see what else I want to kind of go through before I jump off of here. Something different when it comes to ISE 2.2. I think we've covered a lot of the bigger things. Let's see, and the reporting actually got really nice as well. I really like the graphics. They definitely improved the look and feel of it, and we'll go over this once we have some authentications. But it does look pretty sweet. So. And the threat-centric NAC live logs as well. Pretty cool thing to see as vulnerabilities are being assessed. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video, and thank you again for watching this.